The Look, it is gutsy to ask him. He's kind of washed up. I mean, I wouldn't say it is injuries that were the issue, but something happened in 2020 that was not related to injuries. That's the great mystery with Carson Wentz. Yeah, he got injured in 2017 when he was on track to be the NFL MVP. Yeah, 2018 he was still getting over that, and then he had the back problem. 2019. He was great. He was the only guy that was healthy down the stretch. He took the Eagles from 5-7 to 9-7. They got in the playoffs, and he had the illegal hit from Jadeveon Clowney that was neither flagged nor fined that gave him a concussion. But last year he was healthy and it all fell apart. So that's the great mystery for the Colts. Before they get caught up in all this, and Jim Irsay, the owner of the team, what a surprise. He's already super optimistic about the team under Carson Wentz. You got to figure out what happened last year, whether it was a fluke or whether this is just where he is in his football career after 5 years in the NFL, Myles.
Well, I think it's great that he feels comfortable with Frank Reich, and I think it's great that he is trying to focus on everything going forward and all that. But I think at the same time, it's impossible, basically, to ignore what he did and how badly that he looked in last year's games. And I just look at the sack numbers because, yes, a lot of times we put sacks on the offensive line, and we always talk about pass protection, and pass protection has to get better and all that. But he was sacked 7 or more times thrice. Not once, not twice, thrice. How does that happen? And how do you then say, I'm going to magically get better at going through my progressions and not holding on to the ball? That's weird. It's why he was sacked 50 times in only 12 games, and Deshaun Watson was sacked 49 times, and that happened in 16. He was sacked once more per game. That's a lot that's on Carson Wentz, and I don't know that anything is magically going to solve that just by going to a head coach you're comfortable with.
Reich was the offensive coordinator in Philly when Wentz played his best football. Here's Wentz from yesterday talking about that reunion you mentioned with Frank Reich.
Getting to work with him for 2 years, and not just the personal side of things, which we knew we had a great relationship with that, but the X's and O's of football and how we see the game and how we can kind of have healthy discussions and disagreements, but really challenge each other and ultimately make each other better. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward that that's something I'm super excited about, getting to work with him again, because I have the utmost respect for the man that he is, the friend that he's been to me as well, but also the coach that he is as well.
When it was clear things were falling apart for Wentz in Philadelphia, Indianapolis was the only play. And really, if the Eagles didn't have Indianapolis and Frank Reich there, I don't know what they would have gotten for Carson Wentz. Would they have had to have done a Brock Osweiler hot potato trade where you give up net trade assets to get the contract off your roster? They may have had to do that. And I can't help but wonder, Myles, whether to some extent when things began to fracture in Philly, Wentz specifically concluded at some level, I want to get back with Frank Reich. And Phillip Rivers, he's the quarterback now. He goes after this year. I slide into Indianapolis. As a human being at some point over the course of the 2020 season, I don't think it's unreasonable to think Carson Wentz had that idea, had that notion, and ultimately that aspiration to get a reunion with Frank Reich.
No, of course. And that's why I think he said in that presser that it was about the Green Bay game when he was benched, that he felt like that's when he knew it probably wasn't going to work in Philadelphia for him. And I mean, I guess it took him that long, but okay. And if it's at that point, then you're like, man, where else could I go? Maybe have some success. I look around the league. Where are the guys that I'm comfortable with? The only conclusion has to be Indianapolis, because it's somebody that you worked with and somebody who you feel like brought the best out of you. And I guess the only thing was, well, is Phillip Rivers going to be there or not going forward? And so probably when Phillip Rivers retired and announced that retirement so soon after the 2020 season, Carson Wentz's eyes probably just lit up and his ears probably perked up, and he was like, wow, if I can get myself there, then I can probably really resurrect my career in a way that's going to be beneficial for everybody. So it's worked out for him so far. Let's see if it works out for him on the field, because that's really, I think, where the true test is going to be.
And one thing we know is there's always something going on behind the scenes. And once Frank Reich thought maybe he's going to get Carson Wentz, that may have accelerated the retirement decision of Phillip Rivers if the Colts made it clear they were ready to move on. And this is a better situation for them long term because it was one more year max with Rivers. It's multiple years. It's 10 more years potentially with Wentz if they can get this figured out. Wentz was also asked yesterday whether or not he specifically requested a trade from the Eagles. Here's the question with the answer from Carson Wentz.
Are you saying you didn't want to be traded?
I'm not saying one way or another. There's a lot of conversations, a lot of things that kind of shook out, and as it played out, this is what went down, and I'm excited about it. I'll tell you that much.
Was there a moment, Carson, where you felt that maybe it just was it in Green Bay? Like, was there just a moment where you felt like, you know what, maybe it's just time for a fresh start? Was there a moment?
Green Bay was probably the moment that I realized, this might not be it. When anytime you're pulled, you don't know what's, am I going to go back out next week, next drive? Like, I had no idea. And so all of those things go through your mind, but try and not overthink it. Try and just be in the moment, do what I can. Obviously frustrated to not be playing, but at the same time, trying to be there for my teammates and do everything I can to help the team win. And, but yeah, those thoughts definitely, creep in once you're benched, and that's just how it unfolded.
Wentz has found a way to fashion almost a Clark Kent Superman type of a dichotomy here where he's managed to keep the high road and never have to say anything that anyone could criticize him for. When it was obvious during the season, Myles, someone from the Wentz camp was repeatedly leaking things like the relationship with Doug Peterson is fractured beyond repair. Carson Wentz wants out of Philadelphia. Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson didn't speak for weeks, a claim that still is implausible. 8, 9, 10 weeks. How can the quarterback and the head coach not speak for 8, 9, or 10 weeks when he was only benched for the last 4 weeks of the season? But somebody was stirring it up with or without Wentz's consent when Wentz was the guy who never said anything that was remotely controversial. But it's clear now in hindsight, he wanted out and he got out. And now there's no reason to look backward. He looks forward, and let's see if he can be the guy that the Eagles thought he was when they traded up, thought he was early in his career, and thought he was when they kept him instead of Nick Foles and paid Carson Wentz $33.5 million a year.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me of Mark McGuire in that old congressional hearing. I'm not here to talk about the past. When he's just like, I don't know what to say if I requested a trade one way or the other. But look, if this works, then it's one of the most masterful jobs that I think any quarterback has done when he's in the middle of a contract to get himself out of one situation and put himself in another situation where he thinks he can be successful. And I think you're absolutely right. It's almost impossible to think that the coach and the quarterback weren't speaking. How do you not speak to the coach? How does that even work? How are you implementing a game plan? He's calling the plays. Don't you guys have to figure out something that works for both of you, because that's how you have job security? And I guess that's why both don't have jobs in Philadelphia anymore. So yeah, it was a bad situation, I think, for everybody in Philadelphia. And now both of these guys, the team, and then Carson Wentz himself, they both get fresh starts.
And look, it's possible that what Shefty meant when he said that on 97.5, The Fanatic in Philly, was they weren't communicating away from the field. What happens is you speak one way on TV when you are fully aware and conscious of the fact that everything you say can and will be used against you. You get into a looser, more comfortable radio setting. Sometimes you're not as buttoned up, and sometimes things come out in a way that are easier to scrutinize and criticize. So I always prefer those when it's someone else and not me, so I can scrutinize and criticize. But it always was implausible that they didn't speak for 8, 9, or 10 weeks. But maybe they stopped speaking away from the meeting room and the practice field and the stadiums.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.